Yeah, so what we're going to do today is I'm just going to show you guys a sample poster, which I should have screen shared now. This is the scientific research poster. So this makes up our outcome 3 SAC. Okay, so outcome 3 SAC means in unit 4, unlike unit 3, we have 3 outcomes. So unit 4 outcome 1, unit 4 outcome 2, unit 4 outcome 3. So unit 4 outcome 1 is consciousness and sleep. Unit 4 outcome 2 is all about mental health and mental disorders, and unit 4 outcome 3 is kind of the research methods component, which we already started early on this year. And unit 4 outcome 3 is our main poster assignment. So usually every year what we do is we try to get the unit 4 outcome 3 assessment out of the way. So we've got research methods done and out of the way. Because unlike other SACs you've done, and if you remember last year as well, the poster SAC is quite extensive. It's not something we just do in a double period or a single period. It's something that goes on across like at least 2 weeks. So that's why we want to get that out of the way and get that done. So basically this is like what I've just screen shared with you guys now is an example of a poster, okay, a research poster. It's related to a unit 1 and 2 topic, but it's more or less the same format, okay, the same structure. Just like last year, you will be filling in a template on PowerPoint with all the information that you're going to be using from or you're going to be taking from your logbook. Now we have put together a logbook online this year. So last year, I remember a lot of you were saying that, oh, it's really hard for us to, type up everything that we've written by hand in our logbook. So this year will be a little bit different. I think we will be using EP. So Miss B has actually put the logbook on EP. So what that means is you'll be typing in all the information in we could call it a digital logbook or online logbook during the planning periods. And then all you really have to do in the final write-up is literally just copy paste or transfer across from the digital online logbook to the PowerPoint template. So it's going to be a lot faster for you to get that done. Okay, now this is just the poster and you can see what it looks like, and you can see that there are different sections. You've got your introduction, you've got your method, results, discussion, references. That's literally all we're expecting from you for unit 3 and 4 as well. And I'm going to give you guys a printed version of this, like in A3 size, first day back or first lesson we have when we get back. But yeah,
I think we did
EP
last year. I think we did EP last year as well. First, they made us write down on the paper, and then like they told us to like submit it on EP, like type it up.
Oh no, that wasn't submitting on EP. We might have submitted on EP, but that was the final write-up. So the logbook, we did on paper. It was a paper booklet logbook. So you guys were writing in it by hand. But this year it's going to be, everything will be done like online. So there won't be a physical logbook as such, like one that I'll be handing out and collecting back. It'll just be done online. So we'll be opening it up for you guys to planning the logbook and then closing it afterwards like that.
Are we allowed like our stuff?
Are you allowed, sorry?
Are we allowed to like use our own stuff to write it down?
Your own stuff? What do you mean by your own stuff? Like you're allowed to have any resources, like in the planning logbook period, you're allowed to have your notes, your textbook, whatever you need. In the final,
but when we're typing it up, when we're writing it up,
you can't bring material from home, and you're not allowed to work on the logbook at home either. So what that means is the logbook EP assessment will only really be open up during class time. So after the period is done, it will be locked up. And you can't bring in new material to type from that. But yeah.
So we're not looking at anything and typing it up. We're just typing it up.
Yeah, you're just typing it up. Because anyway, like I said, the planning period is just, it's kind of more casual. It's not like a real SAC. You're just like planning it and you're just typing it up. And yeah, it's not really a big deal. It's just the final write-up where you're all sitting in SAC conditions, typing it up on your own laptops. Yeah.
Okay.
Anyway, the planning period is what we're going to be doing right after we get back to school, because we've already done the experiment, if you remember, with the serial position effect, how I showed you the words, you wrote the words. That was our data. And Miss B's class has also done that. So what me and Miss B are going to do is we're going to collate that data and we're going to basically give it to you in a raw format. And then obviously we'll give that to you, and we want you guys to then make a graph like this out of it, which is quite straightforward. It's just something you're going to be doing on Excel, or we can even do it on Microsoft Word. It's not that hard. I'll probably help you guys a bit with that as well. Yeah, so wait, what's the question? Let me quickly have a look at that. Can you research? Yeah, of course we can research doing the planning. So during the planning time when you're working on logbook, you can obviously use the internet. You will need to research, because we do expect you guys to find 2 studies similar to what we see on this research paper here. Okay, you will have to go online and find, for example, 2 research papers or studies. If you remember last year, we did this as well when we looked at different studies on Google Scholar, and we found those online papers. Okay, so we will be using the internet for at least the introductory part of the SAC, for the introduction and the past research studies. Okay, so yeah, that's basically what the poster looks like. But yeah, I will put this up on Schoolbox as well for you guys to have a look at. It's just the same format and the same structure. Again, we're not marking the logbooks. The logbooks are there for your understanding, but we are marking the final poster. So you've really got to have everything on that final poster before you submit, because this poster that you see now on the screen, when you guys do this, this will be your final submission. This will basically be your SAC paper, if that makes sense. Okay, so that's basically looking at that. So now what I'm going to do is, now that you've had a kind of quick look at what the poster looks like, or an example of what it looks like, I'll quickly share the other PowerPoint, or the other screen, which is our PowerPoint that goes through the different sections. Okay, so obviously the name of the SAC for Outcome 3 is Student Research Directed Investigation. So it's basically an investigation where you're investigating a research topic, okay? And our research topic will obviously be related to the serial position effect, because remember we did that memory testing class where we gave you a list of words and tested you immediately, and then we made you write the alphabet backwards and then tested you after that. So we did immediate recall versus delayed recall, okay? And now we have all the data for that as well. So we're going to look at that when we get back to school. So the different sections of a research poster or research report, the first one is the title. The title of the report or poster should be a maximum of 12 words, but honestly, we're not going to be counting. As long as it's not so long or so abnormally lengthy, it should be all right. It should clearly indicate what you're investigating. So the title should be indicating your IV and your DV. So if I'm doing a study on how sleep deprivation affects short-term memory, an example of my title could be the effect of sleep deprivation on short-term memories. You know, it's short and it's simple, but it does the job. If I am, if I'm interviewing participants, this won't be the case in our study, but if I was interviewing participants on how color impacts their perception of flavor, as we learned last year, and one of the participants said something like, oh, I thought it was strawberry because it's red, I could use that as a quote. And I could say it's strawberry because it's red, the impact of color on flavor perception. So you can use like colons in your title, you can use commas in your titles. Okay, so grammatically, that's the kind of thing that you can do. These are just some examples of titles. Okay, the main thing that we're assessing your title on, your title is never worth more than a mark or 1 mark. But the main thing we're looking for is that it clearly identifies the IV and the DV, and it indicates what is affecting what. So in this case, the effect of reward on helping behavior in children. So we can easily see that reward is the IV and helping behavior is the DV. That's the behavior we're measuring for change. So that's some examples of titles there for you. The abstract. Now, usually the abstract, what we do is we complete this at the end of the study. So if I can just put a little box here, write this up after you've finished all the sections. Now, the reason we do this is because we can't really write the abstract right at the beginning, because the abstract is like a summary. So if you've ever gotten to a library or you've seen a book in store and you want to know what it's about, you turn to the back of the book and it has a little blurb. Okay, a blurb is like a summary of what the book's about. So the abstract is kind of like the blurb for your research study or for your research poster. Okay, it's going to contain a summary of what your topic is about, what the aim of your study is, what the hypothesis is, who the participants are, what the method was, what the results are, and just a quick summary of any limitations or conclusions. This is not going to be literally copy paste. You are going to use your paraphrasing and summary skills to summarize these sections into about maximum of 250 words. Okay. Your abstract should be a single paragraph, not written in dot points, written as sentences. Okay. The main focus is that if I can't be bothered reading your paper, I should be able to read your abstract and at least get some idea of what your study is about. Okay, so that's what the abstract is. And the abstract is usually worth about 3 to 4 marks in your assessment. You'll anyway see the mark breakdown for each of the sections when you get your logbook. So we will be attaching or uploading the criteria sheet that we'll be using to mark in that logbook there. The introduction is a very heavy section of your research poster. So it will account for, I think, at least 13 to 15 marks. Okay, so this, along with the definition, is quite a heavy section of the paper. And it's a heavy section of the paper. And what that means is that you need to get this section right. If you don't get this section right, you do run the risk of losing quite a lot of marks. Now, introduction is not just one big section. It's actually, it is one big section, but it's not like you're writing an essay. You've got specific things you need to include in the introduction. For example, you bring in past studies. Okay, that'll be worth some marks there. You bring in a hypothesis. That'll be worth some marks there. You bring in the aim. Okay, you bring in the operationalized variables. So these are all going to be making up your introduction. Okay, so it shouldn't be too difficult if that makes sense. Now, with the introduction, generally, you also need to define any related, you need to define any related keywords. Now, obviously, because our study is about serial position effect, it goes without saying that you will need to define things like what the serial position effect is, what the primacy effect is, what is the recency effect. All of these words will need to be defined in your introduction. Just because, think about it, you can't go to a person on the street and be like, hey, you know about the primacy effect. They won't. Okay, the primacy effect, the recency effect, these are not common words that people know about. And because they're not common words, you have to define them. Okay. So that's basically the introduction. Even though the introduction is worth a lot of marks, as long as you follow the criteria sheet to a T and you follow it exactly and you don't miss any criteria, there's no reason why you can't get full marks on this section if you do it properly. Okay, that's the introduction. The method is probably the easiest section. The reason for that is that it's just related to the general, it's just related to general information about how the study was conducted or how the study was set up. So it's conducted or how it was, or not or, I should say, and how it was set up. Example, who was involved, how many people were involved, how they were selected. Okay, so the sampling technique we used, all that kind of stuff. Now, to make it easier to write up the method and obviously using the APA formatting structure, we've got 3 main sections. So you've got your participants, your materials, and your procedure. And in the sample poster I just showed you before, this was also shown that the method section was divided into 3 main subheadings there. So participants is how many participants were involved in your study, where did they come from, how many were male or female, and how were they selected. So me and Miss B are obviously going to count how many people were involved from both classes. And then we'll give you this kind of demographic information. Okay, so how many participants were involved? We know that they were all from Altaqua College, all doing Unit 3 and 4 psychology. So we already know that information. How many were male or female? So again, we have to look at our class lists and give you that information. And how were they selected? So we already know that we were using convenient sampling there, okay? Because Miss B was using her kids, that's easier for her. I was using my kids, so that's easier for me. Okay, so as the experimenter, that's what we were doing. Okay, with the materials, we're literally just mentioning all the materials or things that we needed to run the study. So this part's a bit funny, but this is where you start mentioning things like, okay, you needed the answer sheets, we needed the list of words. If you remember, we didn't actually use informed consent. So informed consent probably wasn't a thing in our study. That's something you can bring up. you can talk about the fact that we needed the projector. Okay, you could even say you needed a pen to write down the words. Okay, that's literally all the materials you would need to run the study. So if someone else wanted to do it, they know what materials they need to buy or they need to collect to run the study. Again, and the procedure is a step-by-step run through of what you did to conduct the study. So your first step should be that you obtain informed consent for participants to take part. But again, we didn't really do that. So that's probably not something we're going to include in ours. And in the method, right after you finish talking about the procedure, you're also going to do a quick mention of what ethical principles were fulfilled in the study. So yeah, that's basically the method section there for you. Method section is pretty easy because, like I said, we're going to give you most of the information for the method section for you to write that up. So as long as you include everything we give you, yeah, there should be no reason why you'd lose marks there. The procedure, because it's a step-by-step run through, this can be done in not really dot points, but we'd say numbered steps. So in the scientific poster I just showed you before, the sample one, there was like 1, 2, 3, like it was numbered. Okay, so you can do it like that as well. That's the method. The results section is you need to include your raw data, and then you also need to include the raw data is what we'll give you after me and Miss B look at it. But you also need to convert that raw data to a graph. Okay, for this reason, the results section is usually worth about 5 marks. And the graph that we're expecting is usually a bar graph. Okay. Your axes on your graph have to be clearly labeled. Now, this is pretty easy to do if you're going to do it on a computer, because you can use Excel or Microsoft Word to just generate the graph for you very quickly there. Okay, in the results section, you're not analyzing the results, but you're describing what the results say in words, just to show your assessor or your teacher that you know how to interpret basic data. Okay, and we all know how to interpret a basic bar graph anyway. So yeah, that's basically the results. The discussion is then where you analyze the data a bit and you explain why there might have been a certain trend in the data. You explain whether the hypothesis was or was not supported by the results, and whether we can make generalizations. So for example, obviously when you guys started writing the alphabet backwards, that was a delay task, yeah? So we wouldn't expect there to be a recency effect anymore. If, however, our data shows that we do have a recency effect, that's an unexpected result. So then you might talk about why that might have come to be. You might talk about the fact that some students maybe associated something with some of the words, which helped them remember it better. You might talk about how there was too much noise in the class. You might talk about a number of variables, okay, to explain those unexpected results. If we get those unexpected results, we don't know now what the results are as of yet. And obviously you need to also indicate whether your results were consistent with or were not consistent with previous research, okay? You also talk about all your limitations in this study. And what we mean by limitations is we mean basically, so limitations are things like extraneous variables, potential confounding variables, any weaknesses of the study. It doesn't have to have a specific name to it as well. You don't have to always say, oh, this effect or that effect or the placebo effect. You could even just say, the nature of some of the words. Maybe some students didn't know what some of the words meant. You can use that, okay, as a weakness if you think that's a weakness in the study. Another important thing that a lot of students forget is this last point here about making suggestions for future research. So if, for example, we find out that we have a placebo effect in the study, we need to then say, how can we fix that for the future? So we can say, okay, well, in the future, we can use a single blind procedure where blah, 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 okay? So basically that's like showing that you're not only stating what's wrong, but you're also stating how to fix it, okay? And this is really important. And there are marks allocated to each of these dot points here that we've gone through. And just like the introduction, the discussion is another lengthy or another extensive section. I think the discussion is worth 15 to 16 marks. So it's actually worth more in total than the actual introduction. Okay, so the introduction and discussion together need to be done quite well, and you need to allocate your time accordingly. Okay? Just in the same way that you wouldn't spend the whole time on a 2-mark question in a normal SAC, you're not going to spend your whole time on the title, which is only worth 1 mark, or on the results section, which is only worth 5 marks. You have to allocate your time wisely in both the planning logbook section time as well as the final write-up time. Okay, because you have to look at where you can gain marks the most. And having said that, one area where a lot of students run out of time and end up losing marks very unnecessarily is the references section. This is probably the easiest section of them all, because there's a lot of websites now that can generate the reference for you automatically. So all you really need to do is copy paste it across. It's not that difficult for you to do. So some of you might remember the word bibliography from lower year levels, okay? Literally your reference list is like a bibliography list. The only different thing is though, you are not copy pasting the link of the website or the paper, okay? You are going to generate an APA reference. What this looks like is, if, for example, if I wrote a paper, I wouldn't just, copy paste the link of the website where the paper is located. I'd make an APA link. So that might look something like my name, okay, and the year that I published it. So maybe 2019, let's say, the effect of blah, blah, the location of the paper where it was located, where it was published. So if I published it in Truganina, I would say, okay, Truganina, and then, the name of the publisher. So, oops, sorry, that didn't let that person in. The name of the publisher. So I might say Jacaranda or Edrolo Publishing or whatever it is, okay? And yeah, there's a specific structure. So that's what the references in your thing need to kind of look like, okay? And if you guys go back to that sample poster, you'd be able to also have an idea. So I'll show you the sample poster again, just so we can tie all our ideas back together. Now, we're not too strict with this, but if you want to do it really properly and not run the risk of losing any marks, make sure that your references are in alphabetical order. So for example, if me and Miss B wrote a paper, Miss B's surname starts with the letter N and mine starts with the letter M, right? So it would be like, okay. So obviously I would be before Miss B in the reference list because my surname starts with M and M comes before N in the alphabet, okay? So that's the basic idea. So it's got to be in alphabetical order if you want to do it correctly, okay? Yes, so after putting in the APA reference, you don't need to paste the separate link there. There doesn't need to be a separate link. What else do I need to include? Oh yeah, your reference list is always at the end of your poster. So just like your abstract, it's probably the second last section you're going to complete just before you start your abstract. The good thing, especially because we're doing our logbook online this year, is you can literally have your references already copy pasted and all you have to do is use a few seconds to copy paste it across onto the actual poster template we give you. Okay. Also, the reference list is separate from the in-text references. So the in-text references are literally the references you put inside the introduction. You're only going to have 2 references in your introduction. I'll show you what that will look like. But you need to include the in-text references, okay? Because that is a part of your referencing as well. Now, if you don't do the in-text references, you won't get full marks for your poster or for that section. I'll show you what the in-text references look like. And the reason we're really trying to get you guys to do this properly, the referencing, is because when you get to uni, they are very harsh with referencing, okay? They will deduct marks for you. So you got to know it well from school itself. Okay, let's see. And guys, that's not just for psychology. Any subject you do in uni, you will have to get your references done properly. Okay, so what I'll do is I'll quickly go, I think that's the end of these are some examples just for your knowledge there. Okay, so let's probably ignore the first 2. None of us are going to be consulting books, maybe websites. I'll leave the website one there. But here you guys can see this is a journal article taken from Google Scholar about mood management and stress. So we've got the names of the people who did it. We've got the year that it was published, 1994, the title of the paper, which is basically the title for those people who did the paper, the journal or the publisher, which is the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology. 66 is probably the edition number, and this is the page numbers. Okay, 1034 to 1048. This will automatically generate for you if you use an online website, okay, like Google Scholar. In-text reference, so when I'm talking about these guys' study in my paper, or if I'm talking about it in my paper, this is what an example of what an in-text reference would look like. Okay, so this could also be written like this. There are two ways that you can write it. So if I want to talk about, okay, past study that was conducted into stress on mood was that of Wegener and Petty. Did I spell it right? I don't know. Petty, 1994. Okay, so you can do it like this as well. Okay, it's the same thing. All we're doing is rather than putting the whole thing in brackets here, we're now just putting the year in brackets. Okay, this is what we call as in-text referencing. It's referencing that you're putting in text in your introduction. Okay, so those are the two types of references. The first one that I did all the scribbling on is the full reference that goes in your reference list right at the end. The second one is the in-text reference. That'll go in your actual introduction. Now I'll show you what that looks like on the actual sample poster that I showed earlier. Appendices, we don't really have an appendices section for this paper, for this assessment, so we'll just leave that for now. Okay, so what I'll do is I'll quickly go back and screen share the scientific poster again. Okay, so I'll show you guys first of all, before I forget, the in-text reference. So where is it? So here you can see there's one there, that's one in-text reference. There's one here. There's one there, there's one here, and ashes just repeats again from above. Yeah, so this study kind of looks at how many different studies. We go back to the references. We've got 1, we got 2, we got 3, we got 4, we got 5. Okay, this looks at 5 different studies. We're not going to look at 5. We're only expecting you guys to talk about 2 in your introduction. But like, you know, if you're getting your definition from the textbook for serial position effect, you'd have to reference your textbook here. So you'd write a Rollo psychology textbook, you'd write the names of the authors and stuff. I can help you with the textbook reference, but the other ones like journal articles, you'll have to find that yourself. Again, like I said, Google Scholar usually gives that to you anyway, automatically generated. Yeah, so guys, that's literally what the poster assessment is going to look like. It's not too hard. You just have to work at it, and you have to use your criteria sheet very well, as in you need to refer back to that. We're doing the actual poster online, and we are doing the logbook online as well this year. So you'll be typing up your logbook, if that makes sense. Okay, this doesn't mean you're allowed to take the logbook home. This just means that just like a normal SAC, we'll open it up during class time, and then we'll close it once class time is done, and then you'll continue working on it the next time. So we'll open it up again and we'll close it up again. Okay, so you're not supposed to be doing any work for this online, and honestly, you don't have to do extra work for this on at home. That's what I meant to say, sorry. So all your planning for this should be done in class time, and obviously your write-up will only be done in 1 double period, which is more than enough, considering that all you're going to be doing is literally just copy pasting what you did during planning time. So how it's going to work, guys, is when we get back week 1, we're going to straight off the bat, we are going to be starting our planning. You get the whole week 1 to do the planning. Week 2, you know, we have Eid holidays, so we don't really have any time there to do it. That's just 1 week gone. And then week 3, when we get back, we will be starting, we'll be using 1 double period during that week to do the write-up. Not the whole week, just 1 double period during that week. Okay, we might use maybe the first single of that week or something, if in case anyone's been away, to catch up on any last minute wrapping up of the logbook, and then we'll use 1 double period that week, okay, to do the final write-up. And the final write-up, again, is what we're going to mark. We're not really going to mark your logbook, but we are going to make sure we're looking at that logbook for plagiarism, and we're looking at that logbook to make sure people haven't just copy pasted from another person's logbook. So we will be looking for that, just to ensure there's no lack of authenticity in the assignment there, but we're not going to be marking the logbook. So you don't have to make it all pretty or you know, all organized, but it needs to have your genuine work there, if that makes sense. Okay, yeah, that's literally how it's going to work. So any questions, guys, about this assignment in general, or about the logbook, or about how it's going to work? Any questions? Just put it in the chat box. All good? Okay, cool. So just one thing I want to mention is, before you guys go, when we're writing definitions, can we use Edroller? Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So when you're writing definitions, you can use Edroller, and then just make sure you reference that at the end of your reference list. Okay. So that's basically, yeah, we are going to be using, even if you use even if you use my PowerPoint for the definitions, don't write Miss Verween's PowerPoint, just reference Edroller, because I get the information from Edroller as well and just summarize that. So just reference the textbook there. One thing I also want to mention that we talked about in the PowerPoint before was the numbered steps of the procedure. So you can number the steps, put them in kind of dot point numbered format, but this is the only kind of place where you can do this. Okay, you're not going to be writing the introduction in dot points. Okay, that's not allowed. So don't do that. That's not proper formatting. This is the raw data that you can see here. And we always give the raw data captions like figure 1, figure 2. Okay, this is the graph. And there are separate marks dedicated to the graph and separate marks dedicated to the raw data in the actual assessment, which you'll see when you get the criteria sheet. And you can see the method is divided into the 3 subheadings of participants, materials, and procedure, just like I showed you in the PowerPoint. An in-text reference for Edroller would just be you naming the authors. Okay, so I can't remember the names of the authors, but they're on the first page of the front cover. So you just summarize the names of the authors, you put the year that the book was published. I think Edroller was published in 2020. So, and then you just write the name of the book and where it was published. I can help you with the in-text reference for the textbook. We're going to start the assessment, the logbook or the planning section first week back. Okay, so that's when we're going to start, but the actual assessment we'll be doing in week 3 when you get back from Eid holidays. Okay, cool. All right, guys. So before we start the actual logbook, when we get back, obviously only like half the class is here today. So I will give you guys a quick briefing before we get started on the logbook when we get back. But yeah, hopefully you guys have a better idea of how it's all going to work. So I think I'm just going to go ahead and stop the recording here.